much. Thanks everyone who is joining us, even though I know it's very early for some and very late for others. So we're very grateful for Professor Ndlovu Gacheni that he made it. I also just saw Professor Alfonso de Albuquerque from Brazil is joining us. Thanks a lot. He's also researching on intellectual imperialism. And yeah, really people from all over the Global South are joining. So I see Dr. Munira Alatas, Professor Shazib Khan, of course, is here. Arce Capistrano, who are our distinguished co-authors in this special issue. Then a lot of dear colleagues, Dr. Firoza Alam is here. So let me just discuss briefly what we were trying to do. And then let's hand over to Fatima Sajjad after that, and we'll start the panel. So we're launching our special issue. It came out a little bit earlier, but we were too busy to launch it, but here we are. So this special issue wants to critique intellectual imperialism and academic dependency. And we believed that the special issue is a joint project between me, Tamari Kitosa, and Matthew Chu. Tamari Kitosa is incoming. Dr. Chu unfortunately couldn't be here. But then Bandana Porkayasta and Justin Daduya also joined us in writing the introduction. So it is, it comes from the notion that the power structures of knowledge production, the ways in which knowledge is produced and the role that institutions play, that university rankings play, that the publishing industry and journal rankings, unofficial rankings of publishing houses, and the politics and political economy of who gets to publish where and who is read and whose research is important, that is getting insufficient attention, even in current decolonization efforts. And even though decolonization is very popular in the global north at the moment, we are worried that they are trying to decolonize without the global south, or they're just saying, okay, let's read some few key texts and then we are ready to decolonize this theory and decolonize that phenomena, decolonize our nation state, but there's really an insufficient dialogue and exchange and insufficient attention to what decolonization means for the global south. And there are issues such as social equality, global social equality, reparations for capitalism, reparations for colonialism and for neocolonialism, or general restructuring of global economic and political relations to end exploitation, to end violence, to end settler colonialism, might take a much greater role if scholars from the global south were really listened to than they're being listened to now. So really we started this special issue with the belief that decolonization should be a global project. It should be led by the global south. It also should be led by indigenous people and people of color in the global north, but white scholars and highly privileged scholars should play a supportive role and should not be leading theorization, should not be pushing out a ton of papers just to improve their resume. So what Leon Mosavi, the important Pakistani British scholar, calls a decolonial bandwagon, we should try to resist that. And we should reorient decolonization projects in the global north to listen to what global southern scholars and activists are asking for, and they might ask for things like global social justice, reparations. Some ask for the end of capitalism, to do something against the extreme wealth concentration that the global 1% holds half the global wealth, whereas a lot of people are living on the bare minimum and facing imperialist violence. In addition to that, as we can see in Gaza, as we can see in Iran, in Lebanon, and in Venezuela, and very prominently and increasingly in this decade, but in all the decades that were before that in the last 500 years, right? So this is the idea that we should listen to the global South, that we should dismantle imperialism and settler colonialism, and not just build fancy theories. And because of that, we really need to interrogate the power structures of how knowledge is created. So I'm very pleased to host this special issue launch together with Dr. Fatima Sajjad. So I'll hand over to her for her introductory remarks, and then I'll proceed to introduce our panelists.
Thank you, Carolyn. On behalf of the Center for Critical Peace Studies and the Pluriversity Lahore, I am with Carolyn Shop. I warmly welcome you all to the launch of the special issue of Third World Quarterly, which Carolyn just explained. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. A very special thanks to all the authors who will be joining our panels today. And it is an honor to welcome you all, especially Professor Sabelo and Lovo Gachini and Sayed Farid Alatas, who will be joining us in the session. Thank you to the editors of the special issue, Carolyn and Tamari Kitsosa and Matthew Chu. Let me introduce our forum to the audience. We are two interconnected forums. One works within the university structure, which is a research and advocacy center. We call it the Center for Critical Peace Studies, which was built to amplify the voices of the colonized, racialized, marginalized scholars, especially those of the Global South, in peace studies and international relations. The other forum is the Pluriversity Lahore, which is an outside the university community of peace scholars and activists, and it was built to divest from the dominant knowledge of peace and security and to imagine and create different possibilities for the future of education and the world at large. So this special issue of the Third World Quarterly and the Center for Critical Peace Studies, they are projects of decolonizing knowledge. However, both have been conceived in a different world. And in my view, the world has changed for the past 2.5 years, since October 2023. So before October 2023, our work was about unmasking the coloniality of knowledge and being, because despite all its problems, the system was very carefully masked. There was a lot of investment on masking the system. But today we are living in an unmasked neo-colonial era and bear witness to the ugliest face of the empire. So in 2026, if I use the analogy of Dr. Shahzeb in the special issue, we do see the ruptures in the Iron Dome, which are quite literally there, which we see in the battlefield of US-Iran war. And also in the information domain, we see clear ruptures in the Iron domain of Eurocentrism, because the dominant narrative, it no longer prevails and it is no longer effective. The information control has been badly ruptured. So my focus today will be on shifting our energies to building spaces and communities that divest from the crumbling empire and its systems. Let us just collect our energies to carve ways out of the collapsing master's house, to seek clarity and courage to start living and breathing differently in the present. I shall again pass it on to Carolyn, who is the core person behind this special issue and a very dear colleague. I really appreciate her generous and genuine support to help us advance our work in a very meaningful way. So Carolyn, it's over to you again.
Thank you so much. So we'll proceed to our first panel. So we asked our speakers to very briefly introduce their work. And then because there are a lot of connections and opportunities for dialogues between these important articles, and there's space for a larger whole to emerge from them. So we also ask authors to respond to another or discuss and share their views about each other's work, or see how can it be synthesized, what is the greater ideas that we get from here. And importantly, we wanted to ask the authors also about strategies, how they think these very problematic power relations can be dismantled. So both strategies for the global south and for the global north, and strategies for institutional level, and for individuals that want to do something against that. And then we ask each of the authors to respond to each other's work in this way, or outline some strategies. And then we would like to open the forum for the public. Professor Alates is also among us. He is also an author in this special issue, and his schedule didn't fully clear up until the very last minute. That's why he asked us not to put him on the list of speakers, but he said he would join if he could. So Professor Alatas is also most warmly invited to chime in whenever he'd like. So to introduce our authors, so the first panel has 4 authors. The first author is our distinguished Dr. Fatima Sajjad, who is really a beacon of hope and a beacon of critical intervention in Pakistan, a distinguished Pakistani academic, researcher, and thought leader in the field of international relations. Her work has significantly shaped academic discourse in Pakistan, especially in the areas of decoloniality, critical peace studies, and epistemic justice. She has presented and written a number of really interesting articles. Please search her now on Google Scholar. And she played a critical role at University of Management and Technology in Pakistan by founding the Center for Critical Peace Studies, which is the first initiative of the kind in Pakistan, which promotes interdisciplinary research and pedagogy rooted in critical peace and decolonial studies. She also founded the Pluriversity Lahore, where she's really saying we have to go beyond these very rigid frameworks of the university and try to do something more grassroots, more engaged with the public, and more towards a true dialogue and the dismantling of power relations. So please do follow her activities. Our second distinguished speaker is Dr. Shazib Khan, who is Associate Professor of the Institute of English Studies, University of the Punjab. He researches decoloniality, indigenization of knowledge, literature and ideology, epistemic hegemony, digital imperialism, artificial intelligence, and the humanities. He holds a PhD from the University of Punjab, where he researched the institutionalization of English literature in Pakistan. And really, he has written a huge amount of very important articles on decolonial issues, and of course also the important article, The Iron Dome of Eurocentrism, which for me really made clear that intellectual imperialism and academic dependencies were deliberate institutional policies during colonialism. It was not just something that happened, just a random power relation that arose in its own, but it was very deliberate policy to silence the colonized and make them obedient. So we're very glad that he found time also to join us today. Then the third speaker is Firoze Alam, and he is from Bangladesh. So we really have a very interesting synergy of speakers here. He is a dedicated educational leader with over 2 decades of experience fostering transformative learning environments across global education. He founded the Canada-Bangladesh Social Justice Action Research Alliance, and the founder of the World School of Bangladesh, and he's serving also as the head of academics of the World School of Bangladesh. In his research, he explores trust as a cornerstone of sustainable social transformation, revealing how trust-centered approaches enhance educational practices, strengthen institutional effectiveness, and building resilient communities. And he also is doing a ton of very interesting decolonial research for a special issue. He also researched the roots of intellectual imperialism in colonialism and how they take hold until today, how they shape class inequalities and alienation of the upper with the lower classes. So we're very happy to have him here. And lastly, we have Justin Daduya. He graduated summa cum laude with a Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy from the University of the Philippines, Diliman. His research interests lie in political economy, epistemology, philosophy of religion, and Filipino philosophy, while writing broadly on topics from AI ethics to social stratification. His main research project is on the epistemological underpinnings of the current age of disinformation, as well as how to bring about conductive dialogue and social justice therein, especially in a global South context. And he is now a senior high school teacher at Far Eastern University High School, while also working as an intern at Sigla Research Center, where he investigates the growing integration of artificial intelligence in political campaigns in the Philippines. So we invite all speakers to take about 10 to 12 minutes to briefly introduce their article for the special issue, or their contribution for the special issue, then engage in a dialogue with one another, and then we'd like to open the floor for public questions, sharings, and thoughts. So thanks a lot. May I first call on Dr. Fatima as our first author? I think you're muted, Dr. Fatima.
Okay. Thank you, Carolyn, for a very, very generous introduction. So this article in the special issue, it's titled on the delusion of disobedience amid coloniality, location Pakistan. And it was written in late 2021 and early 2022. So a part of it is not very relevant today in 2026, but there are other parts where it remains quite relevant. So I'm going to explain that first. The article is about the project of Naya Pakistan or New Pakistan, which was a slogan of the PTI government, the Imran Khan government, which came to power in 2018 and stayed till 2022. So it was written during the time of the PTI government, which propagated a vision of independent foreign policy, and it emphasized anti-corruption, social welfare, and economic reforms. At that time, I was trying to speak truth to power. I was talking to the government and critiquing their policies because the government of PTI, they propagated a rhetoric of disobedience and independence, which was interesting to me as a critical scholar. But then I saw different contradictions within this rhetoric, which I wanted to point out so that we can make some corrections in the policies. So I was questioning Imran Khan, the then Prime Minister of Pakistan, pointing out some contradictions in his populist disobedient discourse. The purpose of critique was improvement of policies, particularly educational policy vision of his government. But a lot has changed in Pakistan since then. Imran Khan has now been in prison for almost 3 years, facing numerous trials, and completely banned from public and political discourse. So in this context, it doesn't make sense to me to critique his policies, his government's policies, because it is not relevant at the present moment. Right now, I'm concerned with the policies of the current government, and there is so much to question and critique there, including the suppression of dissent and the freedom of speech. And I wish I could say more about that, but I shall stop it there. But there's one thing that I would like to reiterate. It is that the critique is done to make things better. So critique is an act of love. And the people who do critique, they do it because they genuinely care about the problems. And this is why the people in power, they should be listening actively to the people, to the voices of dissent, because there they can find the chance to improve the conditions. So now let me explain where this article is still relevant today. So this article scrutinizes the spaces of resistance. It explores how quite often those who seek to disobey and escape the oppressive system, They remain confined within the system because their efforts are entrenched in colonial logics and ways of thinking. I discuss how some apparently disobedient discourses are rooted in the very colonial knowledge and systems that they aim to defy. In terms of this phenomenon, I call it the coloniality of disobedience. In short, the article warns against delusional disobedience when we think that we are challenging the system, but we do not demonstrate the capacity to think beyond the system. In current context, in the year 2026, when the mask of the brutal system of oppression has fallen off, the system with all its ugliness is out in the open for everyone to see. We think we need to redirect our attention to the spaces of resistance because a lot of our energies earlier was on unmasking the system, but that is not an effort now in this era. So I think it is the spaces of resistance where we must draw which our full attention. So the energies of the critical scholars should shift from unmasking the system to ensuring that spaces of resistance are not hijacked by the system. We need to be mindful of the logics and language that still operate the system, as we can imagine, build and expand spaces of resistance. Escaping the master's house is tricky because we have internalized the system and its logics, and that is something we must realize. And this is the contribution of the article, and this is where I think it remains still highly relevant in 2026 because it warns us against the trickery of the system. And I quote Steve Biko in the article that the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. So this was true in the times of Biko, and it's true today. So in this article, I point out three ways of thinking that keep our minds trapped in colonial system. Number one is binary thinking, which is a key aspect of coloniality that affects our sense of self and our worldviews. So colonial systems, they tend to categorize people and systems in essentialist binaries. For example, a group of people that is ahead of the others and others who are lagging behind. This temporal division is at the heart of modern thinking, and it shapes the development visions of most governments, especially in our part of the world, where we are trying to catch up with those who are ahead of us. So these simplistic and problematic binary categories are also found in many religious discourses of the subjugated lands. For example, the binary categories of religious versus secular, it is often used in the populist religious discourses in Pakistan. And I present the case of Al-Qadir University, which was built during the PTI era, that frequently employs religious versus secular category to describe its purpose. Now, this binary categorization, religion versus secular, it's a product of the colonial situation. I quote Jamal Malik, who explains the colonial situation in Muslim lands in the following words. Facing an overpowering colonial presence that was questioning Muslims' long held traditions, Muslims felt an urgent need to defend their faith. The efforts to defend Islam in new situation resulted in transformation of the role of Islam itself. Islam had to be explained in terms of the new concepts and structures of colonial society. The Western concepts, terms, and values were integrated to reconceptualize Islam as a comprehensive system, a social political ideology, compatible and competitive with the Western system. The efforts to integrate Islam in the Western frameworks created many problems for education of Muslims in modern times. These problems have yet to be addressed seriously, and this is what I try to point out in the article. So the second thinking trap, which I identify in the article, is using instrumental reason, which is another key aspect of coloniality of mind. So when disobedience uses instrumental reason to explain its motives, it serves to reinforce the system rather than disobey it. And this is an important point because we use the reason, the colonial logics, and the language to explain our purpose, we actually lose the purpose. The third mental trap I explain is seduction of the West, the desire to be acknowledged by the West and Western standards. This is another fundamental aspect of coloniality. Quijano explains how seduction remains the main instrument of all power and how it enables power to operate effectively without coercion. Fanon puts it simply, and I quote, "What does the black man want? The black man wants to be white." The white way of living remains the yardstick by which the colonized people measure their progress. However, the desire to be like the oppressor serves to reinforce oppression. If disobedience is conceived as a struggle to catch up with the West, be like the West, be acknowledged by the West, and acquire power like the West, then it serves to reinforce the hegemony of the West. And this is what has been happening even in the spaces of resistance in places like Pakistan. About Imran Khan's educational vision, I pointed out that the importance of breaking free from mental slavery of the West remains a consistent theme of Imran Khan's speeches. However, at the same time, the West remains a constant reference and an indisputable benchmark in Khan's statements. So, the seduction of the West uh, and the need to be acknowledged by the West remains a constant despite the expressed intent of breaking free from mental slavery. This contradiction leads to delusional policies and rhetoric that keeps one enslaved in the system. So, these are the three ways of thinking that we have to be cautious about, especially when we seek to disobey the system. And this is what I try to explain using the case of the PTI government, but it's very much relevant today and current policies of of governments in Pakistan and in other places in the global south. So, in this special issue, there are many other oppressive logics and systems of thinking that we need to be cautious of. The special issue points out towards several of them. For example, Professor Alatas points out androcentrism, traditionalism, culturalism, ethno-nationalism, and sectarianism as oppressive systems to be questioned in the realm of knowledge, in addition to dominant Eurocentrism. And as Ramon Guillermo points out, scientometric regime as a system and a set of logics that we have to deal with. Now, this is another set of logics that operate in the system to maintain the system and the hegemony of the West. So he points out that scientometric regime privileges publication in prestigious and high-ranking journals, which are overwhelmingly published in English in the Euro-American academic sphere. Hence, it effectively maintains Euro-American epistemic hegemony. So, as an academic involved in university policymaking, I routinely encounter the scientometric regime and its logics. And I very much agree with Guillermo's argument. I'm sorry. So, the parallel to engaging with metrics regime in universities, I believe we need to move out of universities as well. The task of decolonizing is urgent, and we have to expand resistance in multiple spheres. I believe we should be shifting our energies to creating free, more radical spaces of knowledge, knowledge making, and knowledge sharing. The advantage we have in 2026 is that the hegemonic knowledge systems have already lost credibility or losing it very fast. At least this is how I see it. In the information domain, the so-called credible sources of print and electronic media, the New York Times, Washington Post, BBC, CNN, they no longer remain the credible, their credibility has been questioned, and they're not credible to the global majority in currently. And same is true for a lot of other things which are deemed prestigious in my domain, and my domain is peace studies. I would not want to publish peace research in prestigious journals in 2026 because a process, it takes 1 to 2 years on average, I witness a live genocide happening through all this time and active wars. And I do actually, we face a real danger of nuclear war across the border in Iran. So I would seriously question the system that continues to tell me how impactful the high impact factor journals are. I would question that. So because peace remains a far-fetched possibility in real life, it makes no sense to me to publish my peace research in the prestigious journals while we are watching so much destruction. And peace especially is a word which has been used by power very frequently to silence dissent. This was always the case in the past, but in 2026, it has become painfully obvious. We have the so-called Board of Peace established by President Trump, and we have his special envoys for peace, Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, a central part of the negotiating team with Iran when things went wrong in the war. And we have the most prestigious Nobel Peace Prize handed down to President Trump right before he waged the war in Iran. So, what we are witnessing is really breaking free of this facade of prestige that has been maintained for many years by the system. So, continuing to engage with this kind of system of prestige to get acknowledgement from the system that is naked and crumbling, it may take up a lot of our precious energy at a time that demands immediate action. Our focus should direct towards divesting from the dominant systems of knowledge and building alternatives. And this is why we began the pluriversity outside the limits of the university. We are trying here to undo colonial logics and systems of thinking through a continuous dialogue in the form of reading circles, panel discussions, special courses, guest lectures, to undo oppressive systems and its logics, including compartmentalization of knowledge, of people, binary thinking, instrumental thinking, individualistic reason, notions of self interest, national interest, logics of fear, indifference, alienation that continue to operate the system. So, one key aspect where we need to urgently build alternative is the domain of knowledge sharing. Knowledge circulation remains in the hands of an exploitative publication industry. And this is a key mechanism or a tool of control, which is still very effective in academia. So I think we need to divest from the system of knowledge sharing, where authors and reviewers they really get the reward for their work, while the publishing houses, they make huge profits out of their work. So we at Pluriversity are launching a video journal of critical peace studies very soon, inviting ideas, working papers, artistic contributions to be openly discussed and evaluated by peers as conversations. We believe that such conversation will have a wide real-time impact, and we honor the process of knowledge making instead of treating knowledge as a finished product. Also, as we see generative AI invading education and research domains, and the invasion of AI makes the research domain more delusional, more inhuman. So we see clarity in reviving open human oral tradition of knowledge sharing, and we also embrace human imperfections. As we don't insist on perfectly crafted drafts, we aim to honor the process of knowledge making instead of keeping all focus on the finished product, refined products. So I look forward to your feedback and suggestions. Thank you.